Hey everyone, welcome to Judging for the Win. I'm Dave, and this is my daily ruling. Today's question comes to us from the True Stories collection, and a similar question was also suggested by viewer Vardarus. Nick controls a graveyard glutton, and Amy wants to kill it using an extinction event. Should Amy choose odd or even? Okay, so in order to answer this question, we're going to need to determine what the mana value of Graveyard Glutton is. Now, normally the way you would do this is by taking a look at the top right-hand corner and seeing what the mana symbols there would indicate, but of course this is the back face of a transforming double-faced card, which means that it doesn't have any mana symbols there. So we're going to need to come up with something else. And it turns out that the something else is going to come from this rule here, which indicates that if we have a situation like this, the way you would determine what the mana value of the back face of a transforming double-faced card would be is you actually look at what the mana symbols on the front face of that card would be and use those to determine what the mana value of the back face is. This is actually an exception to the general rule that says that the game generally cannot use any information on whatever face of a double-faced card is not face up. So it turns out in this case we actually are able to turn the Graveyard Glutton to look at the other side and notice that it has a mana value of 3, and so that means that 3 is what the game considers the Graveyard Glutton's mana value to be also. So Amy would need to choose odd with the extinction event to take it out. Okay, so for the second level of this question, I wanted to take a look at what might happen if you were to copy the Graveyard Glutton. And you could do this with a clone, or you could use it something like a reflection of Kiki Jiki, and it turns out that the answer and the surrounding discussion is going to be equally valid no matter whether the copy happens to be a card, like in the clone case, or a token, like in the Kiki Jiki case. It turns out that doesn't change anything at all. So this is actually a little bit tricky because usually when you copy something, the thing that you copied is going to have the same mana value as the copy. And that's because one of the things that copying does is it copies the mana cost. And so this actually turns out to be another exception, and the reason for that is because, remember what we said earlier, the game generally is not able to access any of the information on whatever face of a double-faced card is not face up. And so that means that when we're copying the Graveyard Glutton, the game is not going to be able to access any information from the face that is face down. And so that means that later on, when we try to determine what the mana value of the copy is, the game is not going to be able to do that same procedure that we did in the previous example. And it's going to look at the back face, but because the copying process did not have access to any of the information that was on the back face of the thing that was getting copied, well, that means that we're still not going to have access to any of that information here. And so the game is just going to define that the copy has a 0 value for its mana value. Note that if we were copying the front face of a double-faced card, that wouldn't be an issue because we would be copying the part that actually does have the mana cost. So in that case, the copy would have the same exact mana value as the original. Alright, so now that we've taken a look at both of those cases, there's one other thing that I wanted to bring up related to this question before I sign out. Notice that in this rule that I pulled up earlier, we only are going to have this procedure where we look at the other face if we're dealing with a transforming double-faced card. If we wanted to find the mana value of a modal double-faced card, well, that process would be a little bit different. Or maybe I should say it would be exactly the same. You see, each face of a modal double-faced card has its own separate, discrete, complete set of characteristics. And that set of characteristics does in fact include the mana cost. And so that means there's no reason at all to turn it upside down to take a look at what the characteristics of the other face would be, because each side has its own special, separate mana cost. And so if you're trying to find out what the mana value of a double-faced card that is a modal double-faced card would be, then that is going to be the exact same process as what you would normally use to determine the mana value of any other kind of card. And that's all I have for you today. How did you do? Join me again next time for another daily ruling, but until then, I hope you have a great day.